Hi, my name is Barbara Ortiz.
Hi, my name is Kelly Santoyo,
My name is Celeste Cortez.
and we're going to be presenting our book review of The Catcher in the Rye. Have you ever had the desire to read a novel that relates to real-world situations that pretty much anyone can face? If you responded yes to that question, you should definitely read the novel The Catcher in the Rye. Now you may ask, what's The Catcher in the Rye? The Catcher in the Rye is a novel written by J.D. Salinger. The Catcher in the Rye, written by J.D. Salinger, is about a relatable New York City teenage boy going to Pensy Prep in Pennsylvania during the 1950s that struggles to mature in society. Holden experiences changes in the novel because he goes from a 16-year-old boy who is always immature towards people to a person who is mature and expresses his emotions to the people around him. The teenage boy, Holden, was able to mature, but he had some external and internal conflicts. For example, depression is an internal conflict that Holden faces because Holden can't let go of the death of his brother, his loneliness, and separation from his sister. The death of Holden's brother is hard for him because Allie was a likable person and smart. To remember Allie, Holden keeps his baseball mitts. Just because somebody's dead, you don't just stop liking them, especially if they were about 1,000 times nicer than the people you know. They're alive and all. Sandra 171. This quote shows that Holden can't forget his brother Allie because he was nicer than most people he knows. The loneliness that Holden feels when Ackley is sleeping after fighting with Starlater, it was depressing out on the street. You couldn't even hear any cars anymore. I got feeling so lonesome and rotten, I even felt like waking Ackley up, Sandra 50. Sometimes he wants someone that he could talk to at night, but no cars are driving. This scene is a metaphor of how Holden feels because nobody ever listens to him like there are no cars. When Holden remembers Phoebe, he says that he misses how smart she was, her fictional stories, and wanting to call her. He feels separated from his sister, but at the same time can't call her because of the time that it would actually cause to wake his mother up, and he doesn't want that. Holden's relationships with girls, phonies, and tough cool guys is an external conflict that Holden faces because he was rejected by Jane and the fact that she went out with Stradlater. But Holden was mature enough to let it go because he cared about her. He wasn't happy with the idea that Stradlater almost slept with Jane, so he punched Stradlater. Phonies caused Holden to lose trust in adulthood, but he sees that it isn't necessary to be phony. Holden states, it's full of phonies, and all you do is study so that you can learn enough to be smart enough to be able to buy a Cadillac someday. And you have to keep making believe you give and you care if the football team loses. And all you do is talk about girls, liquor, and intimacy all day, and everybody sticks together in these dirty little cliques. Sandra 131. Holden believes that smart people are rich because they are phonies. Tough, cool guys believe that if they don't share their emotions, it'll be easier to forget them in the case that anything happens. Holden states, don't ever tell anybody anything. If you do, you start missing everybody. Sandra 214. Holden is one of those teens that doesn't open up because of a fear of missing them until he fully matures and understands that the whole point is that you miss people that you truly care about. Overall, J.D. Salinger's character Holden is an immature New York teen in the 50s that tries to fight against a society that brings internal and external conflicts to be able to mature. Although Holden fights society's internal and external conflicts, Holden wins the battle and matures by opening up to people around him. In terms of internal conflicts, Holden has trouble letting go from his past problems, which include the death of his brother and feeling abandoned by his parents. He fears depression, which is from struggles that he can't fix, and due to that, he has a hard time trying to connect with people. For external conflicts, in terms of that, relationships outside of Holden's family, such as his friend Stradlater and Ackley, as well as people he meets in New York City, really affect his mental health to a point where he suffers from having mixed feelings with the idea of growing up and adulthood. With having been emotionally abandoned by his parents and surrounding himself with teenagers he dislikes, he ventures to the outside and talks to grown-ups. He has no idea what growing up and adulthood even means and has lots of identity because of that.
In the beginning of the novel, Holden realizes that he needs to change and to just run away from his problems at his school. He's failing classes and everyone is criticizing his intelligence, but most importantly, he is feeling jealousy because of Jane. Once he leaves the prep and begins to explore the city, he takes on this grown-up facade. He talks to grown-ups, which includes a classmate's mother, nuns, and a prostitute. He is looking at their behavior and looks for ideas that can help him move on. Readers reach the climax when he talks about leaving the city. He had enough exploring the city because he wasn't able to find anything that would help him change. He has this fight because of the prostitute that he met, and then he enters into a stage of desperation. He feels lonely and just wants to disappear. He thinks about his sister Phoebe and his deceased brother Allie. Finally, he decides to meet his sister, and this is where he decided to stay in the city. He tells his sister that he was going to leave. Once he meets her for lunch, she has her suitcase with her. She doesn't want to be left alone again and wants to go where he goes. Holden decides to stay because he realizes that he wants to guide his sister and do something that no one was able to do for him, which was to tell him about the truths in society and about finding a sense of identity before losing yourself completely. Throughout the novel, the author has allowed the audience to view different sides of Holden. Holden is known to be an irresponsible and an immature character, but it's not always the case. Readers have seen his vulnerable side. Holden is filled with mental problems, and it takes a toll on his behavior. He is a smart person, but just tends to be analytical with the person he's with. He wants to see if he can trust them, and if they are being honest. Most of the time they aren't, and this adds on to Holden's troubles. J.D. Salinger uses these problems as themes, and they also begin to connect more and more with Holden's informal style. Holden is most vulnerable when he looks for a sense of identity. He wants to grow up and just move on. His brother's death has affected his parents and himself. He was young when it happened and just needed comfort and guidance, but it was something he never received. He confided with himself, and his parents never explained to him how he should move on because they also never did. So he copies behavior off of others. The prep school is filled with immature people, so he just learned off of them. He acknowledges that and begins to call himself phony. He leaves the school and looks for a sense of identity in the city. This is where the audience also notices that he has adopted a sense of toxic masculinity. Since he didn't have someone to teach him to grow up, he decided to follow society's norms. He talks to strangers and looks at how they moved on, but Holden doesn't just look at people's behavior, but also animals' behaviors. He mentioned it to the taxi driver. You know those ducks in the lagoon near Central Park, that little lake? By any chance, do you happen to know where they go? The ducks when it's all frozen over? Do you happen to know, by any chance? He's comparing people with the ducks. The ducks moving away when it's winter represents how people can move on during depressing times. He's asking the driver this question because he wants to know how to move on from his problems. The audience also notices that Holden is selfless. When he thinks about his sister Phoebe, he talks about being the catcher in the rye. And I'm standing on the edge of some crazy cliff. I mean, if they're running and they don't know where they're going, I have to come out of somewhere and catch them. That's what I do all day, and I just be the catcher in the rye and all. All these problems that he has faced makes him want to protect others. The younger kids are innocent, and Holden realizes that. He wants to guide them and make sure they don't end up like him, because even though he may never find his identity and find a way to grow up, he still wants others to grow up and find themselves. Holden is alone, and the audience knows that. His mother and father have ignored his feelings, and it makes Holden think he's unlikable. This contributes to his informal language and style. He thinks people just don't like him, so he continues to be reckless. He doesn't express his feelings to others because of the barrier that he has placed between himself and the rest of society. He doesn't need to express his feelings to his sister because she already knows how he feels. Holden loves his sister, but when he's away from her, he can't help but feel alone. He feels apart from his mother and father, but he also acknowledges that they try to open up to him. Holden just can't open up to anyone. He is mentally incapable of doing it. He guilt and hates himself for that. He has this wave of depression when he can't find anyone to joke around with or find something to dismiss his emotions with. I felt miserable. What I did, I started talking sort of out loud to Allie. I do that sometimes when I get very depressed. He has been alone for so long that he doesn't know what to do anymore. When he can't run away from his feelings anymore, he just wishes to disappear. I felt lonesome all of a sudden. I almost wished I was dead.
In this slide, we have images that represent Holden Caulfield's life, as well as his struggles being in society and the people he values most.
What's the catcher in the rye's value? The catcher in the rye's value varies from the reader. The novel expresses mental health and other difficult situations which can be sensitive to some readers. But for those that do struggle with it or know someone who has, will find this novel enduring and connected. Young adult readers will enjoy the informal way of the novel and connect with Holden and to his reckless decisions. Why? Well, because most teens relate to teens that are basically relating to those problems that our teens in our generation have. Most of the time, teens relate to teens that write their own book in a way because they can understand the informal language that the person uses to write the book in a way. Because most of the time, teens use informal language to speak with each other.
Language can hold relevance to a particular group of people, but mental health is something that everyone experiences, regardless of location and informal language. The novel explores the feeling of being lost and having difficulty reaching out to others. Holden's reckless actions and running away from feelings can connect with people that have different kinds of mental problems. He goes free in his mind, and it's where the audience sees emotions that make Holden seem real and believable. He's so open to the audience, and that creates a unique connection. The readers go on this journey with him, and this is where they explore things for themselves. Readers stop and think about certain actions, and even build a connection with Holden. This makes the plot interesting, because it gives the reader an experience to follow a path that maybe they themselves are also going through.
novel The Catcher in the Rye is still relevant today and relatable to the real world. The novel demonstrates how we all solve and act upon a variety of situations and mature as well as learn because of its experiences. This means that the novel is a reflection of society today because The Catcher in the Rye demonstrates how many people hide emotions and don't share them in fear of being judged. This occurs because as a society, many people have come up with the idea that very few people go through difficult challenges in life, and that if someone is going through something, they are alone. While this might seem like the case for many, there are so many people around the world that go through similar situations. Throughout the novel, readers will be able to see Holden face multiple challenges that are common for many people to experience in their lifetime. For instance, Holden's mental health is frequently seen throughout the novel, as well as how his mental state changes due to events that occur to him. Take the following quote from the novel as an example. What I did, I started talking, sort of loud, to Allie. I do this sometimes when I get very depressed. Salinger 110. This quote demonstrates how Holden is in the best state of mind after reminiscing about the death of his brother Allie. Holden hasn't dealt with Allie's death well by not grieving properly, which is why Holden randomly talked with Allie when feeling miserable instead of communicating with other people in his life. Many people all over the world have been in a depressing state of mind after dealing with the loss of a loved one, just like Holden. Furthermore, there's another occasion in The Catcher in the Rye where Holden is shown to be in a situation that is common for many people to be in. This is a situation where people feel sort of melancholic by realizing how one's childhood is sort of easier and better than growing up and being an adult. Take this quote as an example. Children, unlike adults, always look peaceful when they are asleep. Salinger 176. In this quote, Holden points out how children sleep more peacefully than adults. Adults are always filled with stress due to how they have so many responsibilities in their life, while children don't have to worry about anything and they're able to sleep well and stress-free. Holden wouldn't simply mention this to inform the audience because it is a well-known thing. Holden most likely realized how he is growing up and is starting to sleep less peacefully compared to how he slept as a child. Many adults and even teens constantly feel depressed and even anxious thinking about how their childhood years are over and they no longer have the liberty and peace they did as a kid. Therefore, reading The Catcher in the Rye will allow people to feel as if some situations mentioned in the novel are relatable and similar to many situations in the real world. The Catcher in the Rye is a novel worth reading because readers will get to see Holden's interesting journey towards maturity and getting out into the real world. Take it from us, who are previous readers of The Catcher in the Rye, and can give a helpful judgment of the novel. Judging the novel is effective because future readers like you all will see a previous reader's perspective on the novel with accurate opinions. There are no better people to judge the novel other than people who have actually read the novel before. This judgment can both encourage and perhaps discourage the audience to read the novel. Although it most likely won't discourage people because The Catcher in the Rye, everyone can find something to enjoy, whether it be Holden managing new and difficult lifestyle, or readers could even find a connection to Holden's difficult experience through life itself. Furthermore, the writing style in this novel is enjoyable because readers will get to see Holden's true thoughts and feelings towards others. Holden also speaks in a way that is relatable to the audience because he discusses topics like friendship, loneliness, and much more. Take the following quote from the novel as an example. The trouble was, though, my address book only has about 3 people in it, Salinger 151. In this quote, Holden is dealing with loneliness by expressing how his address book doesn't have many people in it. Readers can find this relatable because people sometimes feel lonely, and when they see something physically that tells them that they are lonely, it doesn't make them feel too great. This can also make them want to hang out with people just to feel popular and appreciated. This quote can allow readers to feel a connection with Holden's issues with loneliness and even allow readers to not feel unwanted or feel like an outcast. Finally, this novel is worth reading because it is a reflection of society today. This novel doesn't limit connections with people like Holden. Reckless thinking and immature behavior doesn't always mean that an issue of mental health is limited to young and immature teens. People all over the world, young and old, female or male, can experience these emotions. We have learned more about ourselves and our society by reading The Catcher in the Rye, because this novel has led us to understand that no matter how tough the real world can hit you, you are not alone and you are strong enough to fight through the challenges that come upon you.
We hope you will be the next person to read The Catcher in the Rye, and we would like to leave you all with this question. If you were a character in this novel, how would your character change Holden's view or actions in society? Thank you for listening to our book review of Catcher in the Rye.